The roar of the crowd at Churchill Downs was unlike anything Liam Keegan had ever experienced. Hooves pounded against the packed dirt, thunderous and relentless as he guided his beloved chestnut mare, Lady Ember, into position for the final stretch. The world seemed to tighten around him, shrunk to the silhouette of a finishing post, drenched in sunlight. It was the pinnacle of the racing season, and he had devoted his entire existence to crossing that line first. But in one unexpected, heart-stopping instant, Lady Ember stumbled and collapsed, mid-race, leaving Liam and thousands of spectators breathless, wondering what fate would bring next. Liam Keegan loved horses before he could even walk. Growing up on a small farm in rural Kentucky, just an hour's drive from the famous Churchill Downs, he spent his childhood trailing the hooves of any horse he could befriend. But the farm was modest, and his parents never had the resources to indulge his passion beyond the occasional pony ride. Still, every year, when the Kentucky Derby was broadcast on TV, Liam's eyes would sparkle with quiet wonder. He told everyone who would listen that he wanted to become a jockey and ride a thoroughbred champion. At 12 years old, Liam's life changed when a local trainer, Carlos Penna, took notice of the boy's fascination for horses. Carlos worked with young, inexperienced riders, and he saw in Liam a spark that was impossible to ignore. One summer morning, Carlos let him sit astride a retired racehorse, a gentle bay gelding named October's Song. It was the first time Liam properly held the reins, the first time he felt the sheer power of a majestic creature beneath him. Even at a slow canter, the exhilarating thrum of possibility coursed through his veins. By the end of that day, Liam decided that whatever life threw his way, he would become a jockey, determined to chart his path toward the fabled gates of Churchill Downs. Liam's journey wasn't easy. Every morning before school, he'd pedal his bicycle down a winding gravel road to the stables where Carlos trained. He would clean stalls, groom the horses, and fix whatever needed fixing. In exchange, Carlos taught him how to ride, offering pointers on balance, posture, and how to communicate with a horse using subtle shifts of weight. He emphasized kindness too, showing Liam that to ride well was to form a partnership with the animal, a gentle nudge, a pat on the neck, speaking softly in a soothing voice. Liam flourished under Carlos's mentorship. He had found a calling, and for the first time in his life, it felt like the world was an open track waiting for him to gallop forward. As Liam grew older, he remained slender, with a wiry strength that belied his small stature, a perfect build for a jockey. By the time he was 17, his single-minded dedication to the sport had become evident to everyone who knew him. Yet, money was tight, and attending a formal jockey school was a dream out of reach. Instead, Carlos arranged for him to shadow older, more experienced riders at local meets. Liam learned to read a horse's ears for signals of fear or discomfort, and he picked up on the subtle language of muscle tension through his thighs against the horse's sides. He learned that success in racing was more than speed, it was connection. Still, every racer needs a mount a horse that fits them like a glove, and for Liam, that horse would one day come in the form of a spirited chestnut filly, Lady Ember. Even as a 2-year-old, Lady Ember had an extraordinary sense of awareness and an almost regal carriage. She was foaled from decent lineage, not exactly superstar thoroughbred lines, but she was well bred enough to stand out. Carlos had been hired to train her under the watchful eye of her owner, an aging businessman named Richard Wilcox, who believed the horse had promise. When Liam first met Lady Ember, she was skittish around new people, but the moment Liam touched her muzzle, whispering gentle words of reassurance, she grew calm, as if she had known him forever. Liam and Lady Ember began an unspoken conversation from that moment onward. He spent hours each day working with her, never rushing or pushing too hard. Where some trainers forced horses into a mold, Liam's approach was to understand Lady Ember's unique temperament and let her lead the dance while he guided her with compassion and quiet confidence. He believed in her ability, encouraging her to test her speed on open stretches and praising her when she responded to his smallest cues. Over the months, a beautiful synergy emerged. Richard Wilcox, noticing the harmonious bond, agreed to let Liam ride Lady Ember in her maiden races. They began at the local track, overshadowed by the bigger, glitzier names who drew the large crowds. Though the stands were modest, the sense of competition was fierce. In her debut, Lady Ember placed third, bursting with a final sprint that left the audience in awe. Soon after, she improved to a second-place finish. It wasn't long before she notched her first victory, surging ahead in the final furlong as Liam's heart thundered in his chest. The feeling of crossing the finish line in first place was more than triumph. It was the culmination of years of dreaming. Yet, success can be a double-edged sword. As Lady Ember's reputation grew, so did the weight of expectations. Word spread through Kentucky horse racing circles of a determined young jockey named Liam Keegan and his blazing chestnut filly. Offers trickled in from larger stables, but Richard Wilcox, impressed by Liam's character, insisted that Liam remain Lady Ember's jockey. By the time she was 4, Lady Ember was set to compete in higher-profile races. In each one, Liam rode her with poise and dedication. Though they didn't always win, their synergy was evident, and they rarely finished outside the top 3. The crowning moment came with the announcement that Lady Ember would run in the Cardinal Stakes at Churchill. Down's a dream come true for Liam to race under the famed twin spires. Race day arrived brimming with tension. The sun was bright and golden, casting sharp shadows on the track. The familiar smell of hay, leather, and sweat mingled with the tang of concession stand hot dogs and spilled beer. The stands were packed, thousands of voices buzzing in collective anticipation. Liam felt jittery, adrenaline fizzling beneath his skin. He ran a hand over Lady Ember's soft mane, his heart pounding with excitement tinged with dread. This was the largest crowd he had ever faced, and the significance of racing at Churchill Downs weighed heavily upon him. Yet, each time he looked at Lady Ember's keen, intelligent eyes, he drew strength from her unwavering presence. The parade to the starting gate felt surreal. Towering thoroughbreds pranced nervously, jockeys in brightly coloured silks making final checks of stirrups and reins. Liam's racing silks were a deep emerald green with gold trim, simple but elegant. Next to him, more accomplished jockeys gave polite nods, acknowledging the newcomer. He could feel the crowd's excitement in the air, as if electricity crackled just out of sight. Lady Ember's ears flicked back and forth, reading the environment with equal parts fascination and anxiety. Gently, Liam leaned forward, whispering, "We've got this, girl, 1 furlong at a time." The gates flung open, and in an explosion of power, the horses hurled themselves onto the track. Hooves drummed in rhythmic thunder, the ground trembling beneath the rush of muscle and speed. Lady Ember broke clean, forging a middle path with careful restraint. Liam applied just enough rein pressure to keep her from lunging too soon. They had a strategy: maintain a steady pace and save their energy for the final push. The first turn came swiftly, jockeys jostling for position, dirt kicking up in an earthy spray. Through the cacophony, Liam barely registered the crowd's roar, locked instead on the pace and posture of his filly. Down the backstretch, Lady Ember's stride settled into a sweet spot. She moved fluidly, like a dancer, hooves striking the ground in steady percussion. A couple of horses began pulling ahead, fighting each other for the lead. The rest of the field bunched up behind them, forming a tight pack. Liam glanced to his left and saw the swirling blur of colours. To his right, he caught sight of the rail, the boundary between the track and the cheering spectators, their faces a blur of eager anticipation. He felt the sticky sweat under his helmet and the fierce surge of love for his horse. Whatever the outcome, he was proud of how far they had come. Approaching the half-mile mark, Lady Ember signaled she was ready to surge. Liam sensed it through her quickening stride, the tension in her powerful hindquarters. He relaxed the reins, giving her freedom. She stretched out, accelerating with smooth intensity, passing one horse, then another. The crowd's roar began to swell, and Liam's pulse hammered in unison. This was their moment. Then disaster struck. Midway around the final turn, Lady Ember's stride faltered. It happened so quickly that Liam's mind couldn't fully process what he felt. A sudden hitch in her movement, a trembling quake that travelled up the reins. Before he could react, her front legs buckled. She slammed into the dirt in a sickening motion, her momentum carrying both of them forward. Liam lurched over her neck, skidding along the ground, the track's grit burning his cheek as he fought not to be crushed beneath 1,000 pounds of tumbling horse. For an excruciating second, everything slowed. The thundering wave of hooves zoomed past. Other jockeys veered wide, straining to avoid the fallen duo. The crowd's roars curdled into a collective gasp, then silence. Liam's vision blurred from the harsh collision, and pain prickled along his shoulder and side. He sucked in a desperate breath, eyes focusing on Lady Ember, who lay trembling, sides heaving in laboured spasms. The rules in racing are clear. If a horse collapses and can't rise, the official veterinarians and track crew arrive, often with the dreaded screens to block the view from spectators if the injury is catastrophic. 1,000 horrifying stories raced through Liam's mind, broken legs, irreparable damage that meant immediate euthanasia. The heartbreak of such an outcome was something every jockey understood but hoped never to face. Liam scrambled to his knees, ignoring the surge of pain in his shoulder. Over the loudspeaker, an announcer spoke in tense, grave tones. Liam reached Lady Ember, who struggled to lift her head. Her eyes were wild, rolling with fear. Dirt and sweat caked her muzzle. Without a second thought, he did something that no one in the crowd, nor, indeed, in the entire sporting world expected. Instead of waving frantically for the medics or stepping aside to allow the track veterinarians to handle the situation, Liam pressed both hands gently against Lady Ember's neck, then leaned in close to her ear. He murmured softly, calling her name, as if coaxing her in a quiet barn rather than in front of tens of thousands of spectators at one of the most prestigious racetracks in the nation. This was not protocol. Track hands began sprinting toward them, paramedics on their way, but Liam ignored the chaos. All he could think about was calming Lady Ember, letting her know she wasn't alone. He spoke to her with tears in his voice. "Stay with me, girl. I've got you. Just breathe." And breathe she did, though in short, halting gasps. As her eyes rolled in confusion, he kept stroking her, repeating over and over, "You're okay, you're okay." For several heartbeats, they remained locked in that intimate space, two battered souls in the center of a Colosseum's hush. The crowd, still shocked, went silent. Some watchers covered their mouths. Others pressed their phones to the rails, capturing what might be a tragedy unfolding. Yet within that hush, a sense of reverence took over. People watched in astonishment as a young jockey set aside his own pain, setting aside the race itself, and poured every ounce of compassion into calming his horse. Soon, the paramedics and veterinary team arrived. They circled around horse and rider, urging Liam to step back. He lifted his hands, but he refused to leave Lady Ember's side. Carefully, they guided him aside long enough to assess Lady Ember's condition. One of the veterinarians, Dr. Leah Richmond, A Churchill Downs stalwart known for her calm efficiency ran her hands along Lady Ember's front legs, checking for fractures or tendon damage. Another veterinarian measured the horse's vitals. Tension hung in the air like a storm cloud. Any severe damage could mean the worst. While they worked, Liam felt an ache deeper than any physical wound. He prayed silently that Lady Ember would make it. Time felt elastic in that moment, stretching painfully. Then, Dr. Richmond announced, "I don't feel any clear breaks." She's stressed, exhausted, but it might not be catastrophic. We need to get her up carefully and onto the ambulance for an X-ray. Relief flooded Liam, although tears pricked at his eyes. He clutched Lady Ember's muzzle again, whispering, "You hear that, girl? We have a chance. Just hold on." Together, a small army of hands maneuvered a specialized horse ambulance closer. They adjusted harnesses to stabilize Lady Ember as she struggled to stand. Liam insisted on staying near her head, continuing to speak softly. The crowd looked on, hushed and transfixed, uncertain whether to cheer. If Lady Ember stood, that would be the first sign of hope. If she couldn't, it would be a different story entirely. Then, in one monumental effort, Lady Ember planted her hind legs and rose, trembling but upright. A thunderous, spontaneous cheer erupted throughout Churchill Downs, the weight of collective fear lifting, replaced by awe for the horse's bravery and the jockey's unwavering devotion. Although battered and clearly in pain, Lady Ember took a shaky step forward, guided by Liam and the track crew. Carefully, they led her onto the ambulance. The moment the ramp latched, the entire stadium erupted once more in applause and relief. Racing fans often see heartbreak on the track, but it's rarer to witness such unabashed compassion and bonding mid-race. Reporters scrambled for their microphones, capturing every angle of Liam walking beside his injured horse, still wearing his mud-stained emerald green silks. Cameras zoomed in on his tear-streaked, dirt-smudged face, the expression of a man who cared infinitely more about his horse's well-being than about winning. When Lady Ember was secured, a paramedic insisted on examining Liam. He had a bruised shoulder and a nasty scrape across his cheek, but otherwise seemed intact. They offered to take him to the hospital for scans. Liam shook his head vigorously. "I'm not leaving her. I'll get checked out with the racetrack medic, but I'm going to the equine hospital with her." Everyone around him exchanged looks of both concern and admiration. In all their years, they had rarely seen such devotion between a jockey and his horse. Within minutes, the ambulance departed for the nearby equine surgical unit affiliated with Churchill Downs. Liam joined them, leaving behind a shaken but deeply touched crowd. Word of the incident spread like wildfire across social media. Clips of Liam cradling Lady Ember on the track instantly went viral, and by late afternoon, major news networks picked up the story. In the racing community, a narrative formed about this young underdog jockey who had displayed not just skill, but extraordinary empathy. At the equine hospital, veterinarians swiftly sedated Lady Ember for thorough imaging. The wait in the corridor was interminable. Liam paced back and forth, his adrenaline still pumping. Each passing minute felt like an hour. When Dr. Richmond emerged, her expression was guarded but not grim. Liam's heart fluttered in his chest. "She has a severe muscle strain in her shoulder and a few superficial abrasions," the vet explained. "No fractures, no torn ligaments. She's incredibly lucky, but she'll need time, plenty of rest, and careful rehabilitation. If all goes well, she might even return to racing." Liam sagged against the wall, tears of relief streaming down his face. He was not a man given to displays of emotion, yet at that moment he wept openly. Lady Ember was safe. The future was uncertain, but she would not meet a tragic end on the track, nor would she be relegated to a life of permanent injury. The thought alone, knowing she could recover, felt like a gift of immeasurable value. In the days that followed, A whirlwind of media coverage descended upon Liam and Lady Ember. News outlets clamoured to interview him. Richard Wilcox, overjoyed that his prized horse would live to run another day, also found himself swarmed by reporters who wanted every detail of the bond. Liam shared with Lady Ember. The replay of Liam kneeling in the dirt, whispering into Lady Ember's ear, looped endlessly on sports channels. Online, fans left messages of support, sharing how moved they were by the sight of a jockey who refused to let protocol or fear keep him from comforting his horse in its most vulnerable moment. Within a week, Lady Ember was transported to Wilcox's personal stable to commence her slow, careful recovery. Liam visited her multiple times a day, helping with gentle range of motion exercises, icing her strained muscles, grooming her, and simply talking to her in that same quiet murmur that had stunned the spectators. During that period, Liam was offered interview spots on everything from local news channels to national morning shows. He accepted a few, wanting to raise awareness about horse welfare in racing. In one memorable interview, he looked straight into the camera and said, "Horses are athletes, but they're also living souls who give their all to this sport. It's our duty to protect them, to honor their sacrifices. Lady Ember isn't just my partner in competition, she's my friend, and I'd do anything for her." In that moment, fans and casual viewers alike saw the heart of the boy who once dreamed in front of his television, watching the Derby from a shabby farmhouse in Kentucky. Here was a jockey who hadn't forgotten that the heart of racing beats in the companionship between rider and horse. The weeks stretched into months. Lady Ember's rehabilitation was slow but steady. Dr. Richmond performed multiple checkups, gradually increasing the horse's walking and trotting regimen. Liam's bruises healed, his scrapes vanished into faint scars. Occasionally, nightmarish visions of the fall haunted him. He'd wake up drenched in sweat, reliving the sensation of Lady Ember buckling beneath him. However, with each passing day, those memories softened, replaced by the tranquil sight of Lady Ember munching hay, her eyes brightening with returning strength. Though the media storm began to die down, Liam found his life forever changed. He received letters from around the world, some from long-time racing fans, others from people who said they had never given horse racing a second thought until they saw that video. They wrote that his act of compassion stirred something in them. A mother from California thanked him for teaching her daughter what kindness truly looks like. A retired jockey from Ireland wrote to say he wept at the footage because it reminded him of the horse he had loved many decades ago. These messages fortified Liam's conviction about what it meant to be a jockey, deepening his sense of responsibility not just to Lady Ember, but to all horses who race. During Lady Ember's recovery, Liam spent more hours studying veterinary texts and consulting with specialists, determined to enhance his knowledge so he could better care for her and understand equine health. He realized he had a role to play beyond racing's thrill. He could be an advocate, a caretaker, and a voice for a more humane approach in an industry often criticized for its harsh practices. In quiet moments, he remembered something Carlos had told him years before. "Your job is not to break a horse's spirit. It's to join it, stride for stride." Now that philosophy resonated more powerfully than ever. After nearly 5 months, Lady Ember was well enough to begin light training again, though she remained under a strict regimen. Liam led her around the training track at a slow jog. Each session brought a mixture of hope and anxiety. The strain that had caused her collapse was healing, but no one knew for sure if she'd regain her full competitive form. Richard Wilcox had told Liam repeatedly that Lady Ember's health was paramount, whether she ever raced again or not. In that, the two found unity. Both men loved the horse for who she was, not just for her ability to win. One crisp autumn morning, Liam took Lady Ember to a grassy paddock to let her gallop freely without a rider. The leaves on the trees were turning brilliant shades of red and gold, drifting down in a soft hush as the horse trotted around, her muscles rippling beneath a shiny new coat. Liam stood at the fence line, heart in his throat, as she experimentally broke into a canter. His pulse spiked, memories of the collapse returning. However, this time Lady Ember's stride was strong, confident. She tossed her head as if to say, "I still have life in me." Liam exhaled a breath he didn't realize he had been holding, tears stinging his eyes. She was on her way back. That evening, Carlos Penna visited the stable, as he frequently did. The older trainer had been a steadfast presence, offering guidance and support while also encouraging Liam to keep forging his own path. Carlos gave Lady Ember a careful once-over and nodded approvingly. "She's looking good, Liam," he said. "You've taken excellent care of her. I'm proud of you, kid. Proud of who you've become." Liam smiled, patting Lady Ember's neck. "I learned from the best," he replied quietly. Inside, he felt a wave of gratitude for all those who had helped him reach this point, from Carlos to Richard Wilcox to Dr. Richmond, and even the fans who had cheered so fervently for Lady Ember's recovery. He felt an obligation to carry their hopes forward, to represent the values of compassion and respect in a sport that sometimes forgot them in the heat of competition. By winter, Lady Ember was cantering normally under saddle. Liam resumed gentle gallops with her at Wilcox's training facility, never pushing her beyond her limits. Each milestone, her first canter with a rider, her first sustained gallop, her first timed run, was celebrated like a victory. Word had gotten out that Lady Ember was recovering well, fueling speculation about a possible return to racing. Some reporters approached Liam, asking if they planned a triumphant comeback. He answered with measured caution, explaining that Lady Ember's health dictated all decisions, but inside he felt a growing excitement that she might indeed grace the track again. Another 3 months passed, with Lady Ember's progress continuing smoothly. X-rays and ultrasounds showed that her shoulder muscle had healed, though she needed ongoing therapy to prevent re-injury. Her fitness level improved daily as they introduced carefully calibrated workouts. Liam was meticulous about warming her up, cooling her down, and administering massages to soothe potential soreness. He spoke to her constantly, words of encouragement and gratitude. The memory of that collision never left him, but it no longer filled him with dread instead. It served as a reminder of just how fragile and precious this bond was. When Lady Ember was given the official green light for a competitive run, nearly a year had passed since the fateful Cardinal Stakes. The stage was set for a smaller race, a mile sprint at a local track just outside Louisville. It was hardly the grand spectacle of Churchill Downs, but it was the perfect place for Lady Ember to reintroduce herself to the racing world without the overwhelming pressure that had accompanied her last outing. Liam prepared like a man on a mission, ensuring every detail was seen to, from her tack to her grooming. He could sense Lady Ember's spirit, a mixture of eagerness and nerves. On race day, the stands were half full, a modest crowd compared to the thousands at Churchill Downs. Yet, those who attended seemed to know this was more than just another horse race. Many recognized Lady Ember and Liam from the viral footage, and they gathered to see if the duo that had captured hearts could make a comeback. The pre-race tension was palpable. Lady Ember pranced around, eyes bright, ears flicking with curiosity. Liam stroked her neck, offering words of reassurance. "Just like we practiced, girl. Steady and strong." As the race began, a hush fell over the spectators, followed by the thundering echo of hooves as the gates opened. Lady Ember broke smoothly, settling into the pack with easy grace. Liam kept her at a comfortable pace, determined not to push too hard. The memory of her collapse lingered in his mind, reminding him to be cautious. Halfway through the race, Lady Ember's competitiveness took hold. She perked her ears, sensing the horses in front of her. Liam allowed her to accelerate in increments, carefully gauging each stride. She responded with a confident surge, moving past one horse, then another. Down the stretch, Lady Ember turned on a second gear that sent a thrill down Liam's spine. Her legs moved powerfully, without any sign of faltering. The memory of the collapse was drowned out by the new sensation of unstoppable momentum. The crowd, though smaller, rose to their feet, cheering uproariously. In a breathtaking moment, Lady Ember crossed the finish line first, by more than a length. The announcer's voice cracked with excitement as he declared, "Lady Ember, the winner." Liam eased her to a gentle canter, tears welling in his eyes once more. He patted her neck over and over, scarcely believing that they had conquered their fear and their injury. On the sidelines, reporters snapped pictures, but what truly mattered was the spark in Lady Ember's eyes. She was healthy, strong, and triumphant. The bond between them had grown even deeper through adversity. After the race, a circle of well-wishers gathered around them in the winner's enclosure. Cameras flashed, fans clapped, and some even reached out to touch Lady Ember with reverent hands. Richard Wilcox arrived, hugging Liam with unrestrained joy. "I knew you could do it," he said, voice wavering with emotion. Carlos Pena gave Liam a nod of proud approval. The official photographs showed Liam dismounting, pressing his forehead gently against Lady Ember's, tears of gratitude shining in his eyes. The photograph would circulate widely, becoming a symbol of resilience, compassion, and the extraordinary connection between horse and rider. In the weeks and months that followed, Liam and Lady Ember continued racing. Though they never aimed for the lofty heights of the biggest stakes races again, they enjoyed a series of smaller, heartfelt victories. Each triumph was a testament not only to Lady Ember's physical recovery, but also to Liam's unwavering conviction that horses deserve to be loved and protected, especially amid the rigors of competitive racing. Outside of competition, Liam devoted himself to advocacy, speaking about better safety measures at racetracks, improved veterinary care, and the importance of listening to a horse's cues. His platform, born from a moment of heartbreak, became a rallying cry for more humane treatment of these magnificent creatures. No longer just a rising young jockey, Liam emerged as a thoughtful voice for reform in the sport he cherished. Yet the real magic happened away from the cameras, in the quiet mornings when Liam would walk Lady Ember around the stable grounds, letting her sniff the fresh grass and feel the gentle rays of sunrise. He would breathe in the sweet scent of hay and horse, a whiff of memory taking him back to his childhood farm, to the days when the Kentucky Derby on TV was his only glimpse of possibility. Now, he lived and breathed that possibility every day, not just in the glory of crossing finish lines, but in the small, tender acts of care and devotion that formed the bedrock of their partnership. Every so often, Liam would remember the day Lady Ember collapsed mid-race and the stunned silence of the crowd. He'd recall kneeling in the dirt, pressing his hands to her trembling neck. At the time, it felt like the end of the world. Instead, it was the beginning of something far greater than any trophy or track record. That pivotal moment defined him a reminder that true success in this life requires the courage to love unconditionally, to stand beside those who rely on us, even when it means forsaking the rules or risking our own dreams. In that choice, Liam discovered a deeper meaning to his life and to racing, a meaning that continued to guide him and Lady Ember through every triumph and challenge. Thanks for joining me on this journey of triumph, born out of heartbreak. Liam Keegan and Lady Ember showed us that real champions aren't just made by crossing the finish line first. They're forged in the moments of compassion and sacrifice that test our bonds and our spirits. Through setbacks, perseverance, and an unbreakable connection, they emerged stronger and more united than ever. If their story moved you, please take a second to like this video and share it with friends who could use a reminder that hope can rise from the darkest circumstances. And if you don't want to miss more inspiring stories like this, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Your support means the world to me, and together we can keep these stories of resilience and devotion alive. Thank you for watching, and remember, where there is kindness, incredible things can happen.